All right, guys, so we're going to be talking about constitutional rights, responsibilities, and duties.
So you guys just finished filling out your foldable through the pictures. And just one big reminder to remember is that you guys are going to start at the bottom and we're going to work our way to the top. So we're here, okay? So you guys should be on the very bottom of your blue sheet where it says rights, and you have written 5th, 14th, and 1st Amendment on the page. So
what are all these things about?
I don't know, Mr. Lunsford. Let's take a look. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, these things are what we're entitled to as citizens, what we should do as citizens, and what we have to do as citizens. What's the difference between all these, Mr. Lunsford? Real quick.
Responsibilities are things we should do as citizens, and duties are what we have to do as citizens.
And rights are what we're entitled to as citizens by the Constitution. So, what are some rights? So you guys should be about ready to work on your First Amendment in the blue, where you have R-A-P-P-S written out. So, Mr. Lunsford, what is the R for?
R is for religion, okay, and that's the free exercise of religion. You can practice anything as long as you're not being violent.
Okay. The second one, going off violence too, is our right to assembly. A lot of you guys have probably seen in the news about sports figures kneeling during football games. All right. While this has been controversial in terms of people feeling that it's not respectful towards the United States flag, it is still protected technically under the First Amendment of freedom of assembly, because you are allowed to protest. Normally when we assemble, we're assembling to protest, and you're allowed to protest as long as you're doing it peacefully, that you're not causing any type of physical harm to another individual. Okay? So by sitting or kneeling as opposed to standing during the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem at a football game is a protest, and since it is done peacefully, a individual is allowed to do that due to the Constitution.
Yeah, an assembly can also be like if someone were to lead a march. You guys have been to assemblies in school. That's a gathering of people. Press. You ever heard the phrase, hot off the press? That's coming to get some newspapers, right? So we hear our news in lots of different ways. But when I think of press, I think of newspapers just freshly coming off that press. And again, if we wanted to criticize the president or if we wanted to criticize any political candidate, we could do so if we were a journalist, because the First Amendment protects that right.
Right. And this also covers the ability to publish different books as well. Anything that's done in writing is protected by freedom of press. And also with the idea of writing is our freedom of petition. And this is our right to solicit or contact our public officials so that we can get our viewpoints to them. So this might be calling somebody on the school board or the board of supervisors or our local congressman or woman, depending on which district you live in. And then also maybe writing a letter to express your views or opinions about something.
And you guys in school, okay, we're coming up with SEA elections, and you can petition them to get change in your school.
Yeah, and we'll probably do an activity in class, guys, where we'll write a letter to one of our school administrators to try and petition them for some type of change you'd like to see around the school. And our last but not least, which is one that you guys will most likely have a lot of questions about, is freedom of speech.
Now, freedom of speech can also be, and we can write this in here too, also covers expression, which again could be as simple as something as like you come into school and you wear a t-shirt, you know. As long as it's appropriate, you can keep it on. You know, just make sure it's following SR&R and stuff. But that's also under freedom of speech. Obviously, it's what you can say as well.
Right. And one thing to remember with freedom of speech, and it's going to be a big question in a slide or two, is just that freedom of speech is not unlimited or absolute. We cannot say whatever we want in school if you guys think about it, right? If you guys say something that is offensive or a teacher does, right, you guys have the ability to take action about it. And so we have to be mindful of what we say in school, because we're in a public sphere where all of our rights are limited, because we have to give up some of our rights when we come into a public forum or area like a school. So you guys have a middle column where it says pictures or examples. And so on this next slide, if you guys want to pause it, we're just going to throw up some pictures and maybe talk about a couple more of them for you guys to take a look at. So our first one is freedom of religion. And something just to remember is it's in the classroom between the two windows, but we're always going to talk about our First Amendment freedoms in this order. Religion always first, because our mnemonic device is RAPS. Okay? We're always talking about RAPS when we're talking about First Amendment. Okay? So we have freedom of religion.
You see some people, they're protesting, they're marching, but just the fact that they're together is really what the picture's getting at.
Okay. Freedom of petition, which is you're getting somebody to also sign a form with signatures to ensure that you're showing whoever you're trying to influence that there's widespread support. All right, and we will talk about in class, if you guys look up on the back whiteboard, there will actually be a petition folder where you guys will be able to petition Mr. Lunsford and I for changes in the classroom. Okay.
Okay, and you see freedom of the press. This is one of the columns falling down, and you can see it says newspapers, and that's freedom to write what you want, as long as you're not, I guess, spreading lies and things like that.
And the last one, as you guys can guess, is freedom of speech, which is our ability to kind of again express ourselves and make sure that we're giving our points of view out in an appropriate manner that is more constructive than deconstructive. And so there's that. Quick question for you, Mr. Lunsford.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Are our freedoms absolutes?
Absolute? I don't think anything in this life is absolute, Mr. Grant.
I think you would be correct, Mr. Lunsford. The big fat answer to that one is no. And so on the right side, and the last thing you're going to fill out on the blue part of your foldable, you guys need to write in huge big letters, no, okay? All of our freedoms are not absolute, okay? If you think we've used speech as an example, it also falls when we come and talk about all of them. But if you guys think about it, like in schools, right, we are very limited in just everything that we're able to do, because we have to be mindful of that everybody is coming from a different place. Okay, so no, all of our absolute freedoms are not absolute. Okay, shred that up. We're going to switch. If you guys go to the very top, okay, you're going to be on the right side of the red where it says 14th. And please note that we put the little verse there in the middle because the 14th and 5th Amendment can get kind of confusing. But 14th Amendment has a lot of stuff. And the first thing that's really important is that it grants due process at the state level. Mr. Lunsford, you want to talk a little bit about that?
And we say due process, we have kind of our rough definition that everyone's treated equally, right? And so you think about in our state, people being treated equally.
Yeah. Right. So with that in mind, though, is that the 14th Amendment also says that we have equal protection under the law, which this is known as the Equal Protection Clause, but it says that regardless of race, religion, or gender, you have to be treated fairly. Okay, so this means that certain individuals cannot be discriminated against due to their skin color, what they believe in, or their gender. And so that's really, really big. Now, something that you guys might think about is that there's a different, this is in relation to public. So this means anything that is a public service or good, there cannot be any discrimination against. And so that's like the big, big thing to remember.
Right. And then it also is our Citizenship Amendment. In fact, it defines citizenship. In other words, they say if you're born here, you become a citizen. And if the other way is if you immigrate, and you guys remember all the steps we went through with naturalization. So those are the two ways you can become a citizen and enjoy all those equal protections.
All right. But wait, Mr. Lunsford kind of talked about it a little bit, but what's due process? At the very bottom of your foldable in the red, you guys should write the definition for due process, which again is the legal requirement that the government must respect all your rights. Okay? Whoops! Went too fast, but please remember that, guys, and just remember, you guys, I think seemed like when we were in class, Mr. Lunsford, everyone had a pretty good ballpark idea when they had to come up with examples for that. Like, you have the right to an attorney, and you have the right to remain silent, and things like that.
Yep, everyone has to go through the court system the same way. That's kind of due process as well.
Yeah. The second part of the Fifth Amendment, Mr. Lunsford?
It says you cannot testify against yourself in a court of law. Well, you say, well, what is testifying against myself? Well, you ever you see a cop show and they say, anything you can say will be used against you in a court of law? Well, the same way you don't have to say anything to a cop, you don't also have to say anything necessarily to a judge. Because if you say certain things, perhaps it can be used against you. So it's your right not to, to remain silent.
Yeah. And so a little funny example for you guys, maybe this will help you remember, is first, one thing we'd like you guys to do, hold out your hand so you see all 5 fingers, okay? So the way we can remember the Fifth Amendment in this is that when a police officer asks you a question and you don't want to answer it, when you turn 18, as a student and under 18, you guys don't have all your full rights yet, but if you guys could take your 5 fingers, and when you turn 18, if a police officer asks you about a possible crime, you can take your 5 fingers and you can put it over your mouth. So everyone should do that right now to hopefully help you remember that the Fifth Amendment says you do not have to testify against, or you do not have to talk if you do not want to, okay? And you might hear people saying that they're going to take the Fifth because they do not want to plead or say anything that might get them in trouble. And then the last thing that the Fifth Amendment does
is it grants due process at the federal or national level. Okay? Remember, we just said the 14th was for the states. Okay, so you have to know that you need to know that.
Yeah, and one of the big ways to hopefully help you guys remember this is that Fifth federal, okay, and then it just kind of rolls off the tongue. In the front of our classroom, if you guys look up where we have our giant grid, we have 5th is up with the national, and we have 14th on the state level, okay? And one way to think about this, too, is that national is the... like FBI, and then state, so that would be 5th Amendment, and 14th Amendment is like officer area, our school resource officer, or any police officer in Fairfax County or in the state, because they have to respect your rights, okay? Our next thing, you guys are going to flip up one. So remember, we started at the bottom. We're almost there. These stuff should go a little bit quicker. But we have duties, which if you guys want to write in the definitions, it's at the bottom. You already have it written. But if you guys could write again, it's something you have to do, okay? It's something for definition at the top of your page where it says duties definition. You can just write something you have to do, or it's mandatory or required. And so let's go through the 5 things that you're going to fill out at the top here. First, Mr. Lunsford.
Okay, you have to obey the laws. You guys were doing your perfect citizen. You would have remembered maybe you drew a stop sign or you had someone obeying the speed limit. Not only is it a good thing to do as a citizen to obey the laws, but it's against the law if you don't. Okay.
Next, pay taxes. You guys should be familiar with this. If you do not pay your taxes, we talk about Al Capone. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail.
All right. And then you serve on a jury or witness in court if called.
You have to go to jury duty. Mr. Lunsford and I have not been lucky enough yet, but if you get called, you have to do it. You guys, you also have to attend school until you're at least 18. And so it's very important that you do that. And so if for some reason you don't come to school, someone will come to your house and make sure that you are coming to school, because it is compulsory, meaning that everyone has to do it. And last is if there was a draft, and you were called upon it, you would have to serve. Yeah.
The next thing is, if you don't do a duty, remember it's against the law if you don't do those things, you either pay a fine or
don't go to jail. You go to jail and don't collect $200. Okay? You don't get paid. You go to jail.